Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we have made it to ApocTober. So, that means we're talking about apocalypse type of games and stuff along that line. Before we get into that, and before we dive into too many of our details, let's go ahead and get announcements out of the way. This time, we have a special guest with OKSDM, but I won't make him go first. I'll go first so everybody can think about what they want to say. And then we will go Dennis from OKSDM, Skrat, then, let me see. Then we'll do Levi's Spotlight. So Dan, because you have Mustache there with you, he will have to do his shout out, his introduction with you. So, there you go.
Harsh. Sounds good.
Alright, well, as you guys heard, I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads. We are glad to have you back with us. If you are just new here and tuning in for the apocalypse itself on, the Inn of Planar Crossroads, then we're glad to have you. Come join the end of the world with us. But if you're not new, you know that we're trying to get to $100 per month of support for whether that's through Patreon, Subscribestar, Locals, or direct contact, any of that. All of the details and connections to links to where we're going and what we're doing is on TheIoPC.com or endofplanarcrossroads.com. Either one of those URLs work, and it'll take you to a, admittedly kind of sparse, landing page that I'll work on slowly because I'm having to do it myself. I'll work on it slowly and make it look all prettified in some form or fashion after a bit. But for right now, that's where you can find all of our links and things like that. And that's all I really have to say as far as announcements. Except that by this time you will probably have seen that we are going to be doing weekly live stuff for our house specials, where we talk about creating the different things that we do, whether that's pieces of artwork or stuff along that line. Like right now we're doing Adventure Academia because we're creating more of that for the kids to play through and such. So now you're seeing the behind the scenes of it and what they're doing. So that's what we're doing as far as those lives that should be on a regular basis. So there we go. And that means that Dan, there you go. What you got?
Hello, Dan from Avenue Studios and friends. We've got Great Mustache visiting in person, so Zechariah is able to join us as well. Of course, during the collaboration with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, we'll be live streaming the second and fourth Thursdays of the month, 7 p.m. Eastern, where we'll build and play a one-shot based off of the concepts we talk about here on Around the Hearth. So come join us for that. Of course, it's a raffle with our supporters, so they get to play. So if you join our Patreon or Locals community, you'll get entered into that raffle to play live with us. And I'm not sure what system we're going to do yet for Apocalypse, so we'll see. Stay tuned and join us. And of course, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern is After Quest, so join us for that. We're starting our new campaign in 5th edition. So that's us. Good sir, Mustache.
I'm Great Mustache.
Boom.
Okay, so I've got to do JP's introduction again. Had to do this last time. That's Great Mustache. He owns Open Legends publishing thing of 7th Sphere Publishing. Okay? That's the dude.
He's pretty great.
Alright. What you got, OKSDM?
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I am Dennis. I run the OKSDM YouTube channel where I make mistakes running games so you don't have to. Lately, I have admittedly not been making a ton of videos. I've been doing mostly live streams, playtesting my new under development system, Sagas, setting and genre agnostic system. If you want to pick up a copy, it is only 30 pages long right now with art. And the playtest is freely available on DriveThruRPG.
Sweet.
Nice.
Alright. Okie dokie, Skrat.
And Miss Timing.
No.
You have something or?
Nope, you can go.
Alright. Well, I'm Skrat from Squirrel Plays, also on YouTube, and I chat about world building ins and outs and the things that come with that, like character building, magics and mechanics of your worlds and technology and all that good stuff. And that's for both in and out of TTRPGs, whatever your preferred storytelling medium is. And I do lately like to get into some other lesser known TTRPGs, kind of give them a shot, give them a review, and let y'all know about them. And tell you what I don't talk about anymore is video games. I got roasted last week for that, so yeah, not doing that anymore. That's all I got.
Don't listen to them. You do what you want. It's your channel.
Do what you want.
They don't like your content. They can make their own. That's what I say.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Okay, Levi, what you got
There we go.
for Levi's Spotlight?
Derped on the timing. I am spotlighting Gelatinous Rube, R-U-B-E. Talking through different TTRPG things with a nice little gelatinous cowboy. Maybe that's too strong of a word. It's just a hat and some wheat. But there's talk of some of the rules that made older styles of D&D work a little bit better, like the Grand Campaign, where you have a running world on, I believe the intent is for the IRL and the in-game timeline to work in the same way, so a day passes in real life, it passes in the game. You have, 20-plus players, and they all play in the world whenever they get time. But anyway, talking through different rules, how to go with narratives, and you get to see a cute little gelatinous cube talk to you. So,
Hey. Cool beans. I have enjoyed a few of his videos as well, so good stuff. And he's currently at 645 subscribers, so let's try to get him to 700 this month.
Hold on.
Tell him that the end of Planar
646.
Road. Oh, all right.
Beat me. 647.
All right. Cool beans. So, he's at 647 right now. You guys, let's say, like we said, 700. We'll still keep it at 700. It's the apocalypse. We're being a bit more modest with our goal this time. Not like last time. But, okay. So, I believe that's everything. We've done our shout out, we've done our introductions. That means that it's time for us to grab our favorite beverage, pull up a chair by the fire, and join us around the hearth as we discuss the apocalypse. So, skål.
Skål.
All right.
Yes.
There you go.
we also have a Kickstarter to shout out.
Oh, that's right. Can't forget that. Good catch.
Specifically, Jacob's Maps and More, Rat Pack, Plague, Side Shots, and Map Packs. For Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Open Legend, and D&D 5e, or 1D&D, however that naming convention will go as time goes on.
Yeah.
But basically, it's got a scenario and the maps to use it for your VTTs. And we hope that in the future, when this is out, that the campaign is going well.
Indeed. We wanted to go ahead and do that, because if everything goes
the best.
well, if everything goes according to plan, the Kickstarter should be getting close to wrapping up by the time this first one comes out. So we wanted to shout it out in this first one so that we could get it up there for him. So y'all check that out.
Maybe a little burst at the end.
Yeah. All right. Okay, now we can start. So
Skål.
let's skål drug. So
We mix that.
yeah. Let's go ahead and start with some kind of definitions and and concepts so that we can get into this in a bit more clear manner. This first chat is going to be about choose your own apocalypse, and basically we're going to be kind of discussing the different variations on apocalyptic media. The first thing that I want to point out, because Levi and I tend to be kind of pedantic with some of our points, is that
Never.
yeah, most apocalypses aren't real apocalypses. They are what the prepping community would call Teotwaki, which just means the end of the world as you know it. And that's going to be something that's important to remember, especially as we go through our different discussions and examples, so that we can better sculpt the story that we're trying to tell, because there's actually very few pieces of media that go into an actual apocalypse. Junji Ito does some. There's another story. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a short story. I read it or listened to it associated with Lovecraft or Morrison. And it actually was just the last guy on Earth, and he was just a teenager or something like that, and he just falls down a slope or something like that, breaks his leg or something, and that's how the human race ends. So it's very depressing. But
it's like that Twilight Zone episode, the last guy and he breaks his glasses.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yep. I mean, that sounds very bad, but in reality, he's in a huge city. He could probably find a spare set of glasses. But
Right.
it's not that terrible.
Except in the
We'd
Twilight
have to be able to
Zone.
see to find them, though.
Oh.
Depends on how bad your eyes are, but yeah.
All right. So there's that
And
to
then you
consider.
gotta find the right prescription. More accurately, people learn how to live blind.
Mm.
That's so true.
So I would take more tips from them for how to deal with that apocalypse act.
True. Okay, so that's kind
Can't
of
be the last one.
Yeah, true. Okay.
That's the pedantic part out of the way.
And I guess actually with that pedantic part, that could be your first split. Are you doing a true apocalypse? In which case, the campaign is to prevent the apocalypse.
Mm.
Or are you doing a more traditional narrative apocalypse that is everything is changed for the worse? Just about everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. Has anyone run something more true apocalypse?
Now
I'm trying to
hold
think.
on, y'all. Y'all are
I'm
getting
sorry.
ahead of yourselves again. What is the second chat supposed to be? It's supposed to be, when does the world end? Which is where we're going to discuss about the period with which you play your stuff. We're trying to get definitions for people.
That's fair.
I tell you,
I
wrangling
should say
cats.
that there's a Zelda game
Wrangling
that's in my
cats.
head. You know? With time loops and apocalypse stopping. But okay.
Majora's Mask.
Just as like a point of like true apocalypse game, and a way you could deal with that is you get to time loop.
Mm-hmm. That
But
is
okay.
true.
But I think if you want to really actually, I think for most apocalypse fiction, you want to be able to interact with some of the effects of it. So you're probably going to lean away from true apocalypse.
Most of the time.
Right,
Like I said, I haven't seen that much media that actually is true apocalypse media.
because it's hard to without being like, well, you either stopped it or show's over.
Yeah,
You lose a lot when you
becomes
say
a sort of a. Go ahead.
Oh, I was say you lose a lot when you say that you're not going to happy ending something or give meaning to how things carry on. But if you are going to end the world and you're going to leave it as this is absolutely the end, the story then becomes more about how do you live in the face of the end, which can be very, very motivating, and it makes anything that you do very significant. Even your small roles might be some of the last roles your race or reality ever experiences. And so there is still value in your story isn't about saving the world, but just simply how do you make the most of the time you've left. I think Wolf's Rain as an anime leans into that. It, for the most part, has no prospect on a future after the story's over. The story is about how do characters die, how do they choose to end their own story, who is it with what resolution do they want, before there is no more meaning.
What about you,
Sometimes
Dennis?
stories. sometimes stories don't always take that like meaningful and thoughtful route. Sometimes you'll just use it as like a plot beat and nothing else. Like I specifically, two things come to mind. Loki, the Marvel show, where they start messing around with time and they hide in apocalypses because nothing they do will matter or change or branch off any new timelines. And that's how they stay hidden. Sorry, Loki spoilers, I should have mentioned.
I ain't worried.
Another one that did it and took a much more satirical view, obviously, is Rick and Morty. Sort of has an episode where they just go to apocalypse parties for an episode where they just visit different planets that are all about to die, and it's just a massive planet-wide rager. And they just hit up these parties, and for that, when it's actually a true apocalypse, and you don't use that meaning, all it can really be is a plot beat. Sometimes it's an excellent plot beat, don't get me wrong. I mean, the destruction of Alderaan is undoubtedly an apocalypse for many, many people. It's not necessarily the entire universe that the story is being told in is being destroyed, but for that one planet and all the stories that could have been told there, that comes to a very sudden and abrupt end, and it just gets rid of all potential, all the characters, all the settings. They're just gone, and you can't tell a story with something that's not there.
That does bring up the idea of, well, what is the scope of this apocalypse? Because a lot of the times apocalypse, people think about apocalypses and they'll think like Book of Revelation apocalypses. Well, that's a one-time apocalypse. That's like actual end of the world apocalypse. You can't equate the game you're about to play usually, with that type of thing happening, because there's not a stop to that. It just is going to end in that, taking the Book of Revelation as it is. But if it's just the planet, if it is just the planet, like with the Alderaan example, you can do something where it's the apocalypse for that planet, but it's not the apocalypse for your characters necessarily, if you want to do that.
Right.
Which is what a lot of stories end up doing, that it's either a possible apocalypse that is being stopped, or you're escaping a apocalypse as it's happening, or, there's the pre-intro and then post. And either one of those will work. Like I said, we're going to be discussing those in details next time. But the scope of the apocalypse. And also, I know JP wanted to make sure that we talked about the types of apocalypse. So I wrote some down so that we could all kind of sprinkle those in. There's supernatural apocalypse, pathological, alien, or impact event. So that would be like an outside thing impacting this world, or you probably would do at least a planet scale apocalypse. A technological apocalypse, AI uprisings type of things, those fit into that. Ecological, societal collapse, or just entropic, which is that one that usually ends in the death of everything type of situation. So, those are some different types of apocalypses that you can have. And that'll be important when we get to our third and fourth chats. So,
well, and the type of apocalypse might also determine the scope of the apocalypse. Because, if you're looking at some of the media, there was, Interstellar was kind of an apocalypse because all the plant life was dying on them, so they weren't going to have food anymore, so that's why they had to get off the planet. I guess Independence Day is kind of an apocalypse from the alien attack.
That fall under the impact event type of thing.
Has anybody read the book?
Very different than, say, the inevitable heat death of the universe.
Yeah, that's the entropic one. Yeah.
Yeah, where actually there is nothing no story that can come after that because there's nothing there. And I think a lot of these, as long as they're actual apocalypses, the type of apocalypse won't matter either. If after it happens, because there would just be nothing left. There's no story to tell there. But it's everything in the time leading up to it. Like, what exactly are you worried about? Are you worried about plants coming to life and eating you? Are you worried about an outside force invading? Are you worried about, all the other types?
What were you saying, Skrat?
I was going to ask if anybody had read the book I, Robot, not the movie, because they're very, very,
Yes,
very
I have
different.
read the book.
Yes.
Okay. So, would you consider that like a silent apocalypse, from what I remember? Because the end, spoilers for this 50-year-old book or so, but at the end of it, they realize the robots are in control of everything, but it's to their benefit. Like, humans are very much benefiting from it, but at the end, they're kind of sitting around the fireplace like, oh darn, and there's nothing we can do about this. So,
I think, in a sense, there is certainly an ending. It's the ending of humanity having full agency, but it's not the ending of any human agency. Humans no longer control the world as a whole because the robots are going to control the agriculture and the recycling and the manufacturing and the human needs. But everyone individually still has a lot of freedom. They can still choose how they live their life. Robots aren't controlling that. So I would say it's probably not an apocalypse in that nature because the population still has so much agency. But when you do dial into most things that are apocalyptic, you're threatening human agency and you're liberating some human agency with the scope of destruction. So I wouldn't say iRobot is an apocalypse, but it is certainly an end of an era.
It feels more like a secret dystopia, because when I imagine apocalypse, I think an important part to me is death.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Right? So, as iRobot ends, people don't start dying. If anything, fewer will die. And, that lack of broader control and that, humans are under robot rule could be, maybe a secret dystopia? They don't realize that, in a sense, they've lost, or what they've lost. But, I would distinguish that just about any time I think of an apocalypse, it's most people die, if not all. And that's that, loss of community, that loss of support networks are, really key aspects of what I think and care about for, going into or post the apocalypse light that is most... Well, yeah, I think that's a fair enough way to phrase apocalypse as we usually mean it, where,
they were
stragglers on are still around.
Yeah.
The giggle meant you nailed it. I was going to throw out with what you guys are talking about, too, coming back to gaming specifically and choosing your apocalypse. There's a lot of different choices, and I'm curious if you guys have run stuff and what's been your choice, reason for choosing, because there's the story aspect of what you want to tell, like Dennis was kind of talking about, too, if it's the ultimate apocalypse versus the singular location, because that can have different vibes on what the story aspects are, but there's even a more simplistic thing in the what type of apocalypse it is. Might just be because you want to play with those types of monsters. I can't remember who it was, shout out plants coming or something, but it could be as simple as that. What is the thing in your game, in the game you want to run, that's the reason you're choosing this, that you're excited about, and more importantly too, that your players are interested in or down to exploring with you? Stories, monsters. I think that's gonna be one of the guiding factors in choosing how you want to run that. Does that seem right?
Well, it's interesting because when people were mentioning earlier about stopping apocalypses, in my mind, the only thing that I thought of with apocalypse is it's basically already happened, and it's the survival afterwards. Like specifically, when talking about playing games, playing TTRPG games with apocalypse things. I hadn't even considered the possibility of trying to stop an apocalypse. For me, it was something that's already happened, and you're dealing with the aftermath, right? Which I guess isn't a true apocalypse in what we've talked about, but that's
to bleed into our second question of like when your story takes place in conjunction to the apocalypse. Is it taking place during the apocalypse? Is it taking place before or after? How long before or how long after? It really has a huge effect. Like without getting too much into our second question too early, I am a huge fan of like when I see in media that it's sort of like this secret apocalypse, and you don't know that this story is post-apocalypse until you're like halfway through it. And you realize, oh wait, there was this cataclysmic event from beforehand that nearly wiped out everything, and we're just looking at the dregs and what has sprouted from the remains of that event. I won't say anything because I can't think of one that's not giant spoilers for whatever media it is.
Comes with the territory, right?
Yeah. But I think we've all seen or heard of at least one story that's like that, where it's like this secret apocalypse that you don't know about. And I've been trying to figure out a way to work that into a game, but it's not a priority. It's just something I really, really like to do. Sort of a bucket list thing.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, like, basically most of D&D is a little bit like that because you're finding these treasures a lot of times from past civilizations, right? Like some of these dungeons and things that you're going into, it's kind of almost is that, right?
That's a good point. That we were talking about the smaller apocalypse being a planet, but you're talking about it could be just a civilization if we make it even smaller. A civilization that's dying. Depending on how aware the individuals are of the expansive world around them would affect the story there
left
too.
Is their architecture and their loot,
right? But they're trash
and their traps, obviously.
I mean Pompeii.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fair enough.
There's
a lot of traps at Pompeii.
We live in a post-apocalyptic world. Many nations have had their own apocalypses, and we are growing from that.
I mean, the dinosaurs.
Yes.
Well,
It's true. What a nation. The dinosaurs.
I think that there is a fascination with post-apocalyptic stuff in man's history, simply because looking back, if you believe, as I do, the biblical narrative, there was an apocalypse, at least what we would call one in modern terms, the global flood, which means...
Right.
And so many different cultures have held on to that, including things as far back as like the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Thank you.
It is so...
I was waiting for someone to bring it up.
It's so good. For being one of the first epics, it's really good. The thing is, he goes to the ancient that made it through the flood. It alludes to going back to the one that made it through the flood, to Noah, the grandfather that made it through the flood, implying then that Gilgamesh is some epic hero from that line. So that's really cool. And it goes back to why so many of our games and so many of the settings that we have draw from that idea of there being this ancient greatness that has fallen and degraded. And, there's that gradual degradation through time and all these different things. And there's lost civilizations and lost societies. And it really makes an amazing kind of thread through all of our fiction to see that.
I really enjoy seeing what medium a storyteller uses to describe this ancient civilization. Like, it could be like it is in Gilgamesh, where there's the ancient that survived the whole thing and will tell you about it in person. Or are you going to have to go through these ruins and decipher runes and read texts? Or are you going to have to, wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey nonsense view it yourself? There's a lot of different ways that you can show this sort of thing. It could even just be like, if you're watching like a TV show or reading a book, it could just be a flashback that the characters don't know about, only the reader does.
Ooh. Or in the case of many dystopias, you have to decipher, why is society structured in such a strange way, with weird taboos or with rules or structures? Why is it like that? And often there is some kind of, we had to face an apocalypse, and the only way to overcome this horrible tragedy in society or nature was to change the rules, and now that's why we have a story with these strange dystopic structures.
All right. Well, we're getting pretty close on I'm sure we're over our mark for getting to final thoughts. So let's do final thoughts. Let me see. Why don't we start with final thoughts from Levi, then Skrat, then Dennis, then the Avenue Studios folks, and then me.
Okay. I guess my basic advice is, when picking Sword Out, do you want the apocalypse to be survivable? And then and then also pick, what would I have the most fun running? Like, I think a lot of the more directly interactable ones, like plant monsters, or assuming you want to run like very close to the apocalypse itself, like if directly post, as opposed to like some of these more society built off of it. Like, if you want a game where like the apocalypse happened quite a while ago, the exact way it went doesn't have to influence your current game as much, because it's more awesome lore. But if you're more directly dealing with the apocalypse, just do something that's fun to interact with. Because, like, there's meteors falling, unless you're doing, like, a space game with spaceships. Like, a lot of it is just skill checks for, I set up the force fields. Cool.
Fair enough. All right. And for you viewers that have been waiting, when I heard him say it's like awesome lore in the background, I heard awesome lore like awesome sauce as one word. So go ahead and combine that and make that in the make awesome lore a thing down in the comment section. That's our comment for this particular video.
#awesome lore.
Yes.
There you go. Okay, Skrat, what you got?
Oh man, I actually don't have a whole lot for this one. Just when I hear apocalypse, my brain automatically defaults to the Fallout style of things. Maybe that's because I played too much of it, probably. But
Too much?
Also,
what about just enough?
Impossible.
No such thing.
or just
Nonsense.
enough. All right, just enough to make it where that's all I can think about. But mostly like post-war nuked everybody, but also the silliness of radiation is kind of doubles as magic and does really weird things. So get some really weird monsters and abilities out of that. We did a one-shot not too long ago, and the idea they were on the hunt for government buildings because that's where they were most likely to figure out how the world ended. They didn't know, and they were just curious. Some old guy was hiring them to go out and find stuff, so trying to figure out how it ended, but it was the same kind of, nuked ourselves out of existence was the idea. Military was doing something they shouldn't have, so. But that's really all I got. Nothing too grand there.
Fetch
Not
quest
even a little
is
bit
always
grand.
good.
Good fetch quest.
Absolutely.
I would think the worst apocalypse for you would be there not being any nuts.
That's true, but I'm allergic to them anyway, so.
Whoa, wait a second. Squirrel is allergic to nuts. Okay, man. Okay, you're messing
He's
with
a vegan
people.
squirrel. No nuts.
Does that mean he
terrible
only eats
life.
meat?
Do what?
A carnivorous squirrel.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, squirrels do eat meat too, so
They do.
they're a bit omnivorous. So, I guess he's going to get his protein that way.
I know what creature I'm
I'll
using in my
echo-
next Apocalypse game.
Roving swarms of carnivorous squirrels. Oh,
Gotta watch out for the flying squirrels too.
They come out of nowhere.
There used to be omnivorous squirrels, but there was a disease that wiped out all the walnut trees, and they all died out from hunger. And now all the squirrels that are left are carnivorous. They had to adapt.
Vampire squirrels are a real thing.
Wait, seriously?
Yes, they will attack like elk or whatever. They lunge at their throats. Just yep.
I guess that means a tiny vampire is much more freaky than a normal-sized one. So
You're telling me a Holy Grail got it right.
Yeah.
Yes. Almost.
That was a rabbit, but close enough.
is a rodent.
It's a rodent. Oh wow.
All right, Dennis.
Final thoughts on Choose Your Own Apocalypse. I'll definitely echo what's already been said. One of the first things you have to do is choose the scale of your apocalypse. And how big is it? What is the space that is affected? And how deadly it is. Is it truly there is nothing left? Are two planets crashing together and there's no chance of survival for any life? Or is it a zombie infection starts to slowly encroach on everybody, and it is possible to survive it. It's just difficult. And if you're doing something post-apocalypse, you need to have it be a survivable apocalypse. Otherwise, there's nothing afterwards.
Right.
You'll have a very
Nailed
boring
it.
story.
Character creation. You're all dead.
I mean, you could start with that. I have had I have started an entire, not entire campaign, but I did start a couple one shots where it just starts with the TPK.
Perfect.
Does the deity of the world just start off like, so now that you're all here?
So now that you're all here, I want you guys to do this thing for me. It's like, but our world just ended. Yeah. I know. Don't worry, there's another one.
Yeah, yours and 5 others today.
So let's wrap this up because I've got things to do and people to see.
Get
Okay.
Get over it.
I'm a busy god.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
All right. Well, I have 2 quick thoughts. I think kind of echoing what everyone's saying, but less intelligent. Of figure out what's fun that you want to focus. I mean, it could be as simple as the monsters you want, like I was saying too. That might determine.
That is in no way less intelligent. Making sure it's the most fun. That is the only thing that matters.
It could be stupid. It could be vampire squirrels. Absolutely, would have a blast figuring out. We always talk session 0. Talk with your players. See what everybody wants to do, and I think that'll answer a good amount of the questions for scale, at least to an extent, because it'll start to focus you in. Because when all the options are available, you get writer's block real easy. And then the other thing I just throw out is not having an answer at the beginning is okay. I think this is a general GM thing. Is sometimes I think we all know the players come up with the best ideas without knowing it, and you just say, "Yep, that was my idea."
That's totally what I meant.
Totally. So that I think works really well in apocalyptic games. Seeing how players interact, start dropping stuff that you think might be interesting, and it may or may not be true. Like Zach was talking a little with the dystopian things. It's okay if you don't know that answer. See what the players do, how they interact with it or react to it, and that might kind of guide the story. And it makes for a really awesome campaign or even a one shot to be okay not having all the answers.
I'll add that when you're thinking about what kind of an apocalypse do I want to be the setting for my campaign, tie it to your theme, as long as it's also fun. But if you want to explore themes of, the man's inner monster, zombies, werewolves, something like that, where the apocalypse is because of the monster inside us, is a great theme. If you want themes of isolation and distrust and who can I be around, then a contagion thing, because that fear of catching something from someone else forces isolation, and trust in making a group brings out vulnerability. If you want to have themes of existential crisis, make it a heat death of the universe. All life everywhere, there's nowhere to run, it is coming to an end. How do you want to live becomes your theme. Or if it is something that there is a scientific answer, and you're playing with a lot of intellectual people, they want to do science, they want to come up with an actual plan, build the Ark spaceship that you survive, make it something that can be overcome more easily with something technological, and let them pursue that. Tie the theme to the apocalypse, and you get a strong, robust story.
Yeah, I think my final thoughts kind of go along the idea of going with what kind of creatures you want them to be facing. Because the first campaign I ever ran, I really wanted them to fight the undead. So I made the world so that it rotated, the axis had shifted. So there was one part of the world, half the world was always in darkness, half the world was always in light. And that way the dark areas where all the undead were. And some of the richest soil was down there, and so the group started out by needing to go and get the soil to bring it back up, and that's how that campaign started. So it made it interesting. And also, I just wanted to say, one of the greatest films in all of history, that's a great example of apocalypses and stuff, is Battlefield Earth. It's just
it's so great.
Such a good quality
Look up
movie.
a trail back there.
He's not going to look back.
Interestingly, what made me think of that is when you were talking about discovering how civilization fell, and when the guy was being trained by the hologram of a past civilization that had been killed by whoever they were in Battlefield Earth. John Travolta. So
killed by the Scientologists.
yeah.
All right.
What a way to end.
Okie dokie. Well, I guess that leaves
gets
me.
cut out.
No,
Adam doesn't
maybe
do
by
post work.
I don't do post work. I mean, I do post work, obviously, but no, I don't cut stuff out of the middle. All right. I guess that leaves me. And I'm going to hit on something literary, kind of like Skrat did, but I'm going to pull from one I think that goes with his point a bit better than what the one he gave, which is I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. The literary one, yeah, the short story. Or, well, I guess it wasn't short, so the story. Because in it, he basically believes he is the last man on Earth, comes to find that he is. And again, spoilers, but he may be the last man on Earth, but he's not the last thing on Earth. And it is the apocalypse of man through a pathogen. Now everybody is a vampire. And some of those first affected ones have the things that make out like the zombie type of vampire, turns them into the zombie, less intellectually driven vampires. Not completely mindless, but absolutely driven by the vice that they have. And then those that were affected later, the virus mutated to be less damaging to their cognitive abilities. And so they were able to organize society. But he literally was the last man on Earth. And he literally was the boogeyman to that entire society. And he literally became the legend that they all feared. He became that thing that he was hunting. And that's something interesting you can play with if you tool it right in your game. Your characters might be the last of themselves in this world. And that apocalypse has come to that entire race, species. But not to everything else. So.
It brings up another really cool and pretty common theme of become what you try to destroy in the process of trying to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
The players are the monsters.
No, never.
They always are.
I didn't ask how big the room is. I said I cast Fireball.
Yeah, that is kind of true because the even the rules themselves say you have to use Charm Monster, not Charm Person. So there you go. All right. I think that's everything for this time, viewers. We hope you have enjoyed, and we hope you come back to travel the multiverse with us again sometime. But until then, as always, have a great day. God bless, and enjoy. Bye.
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 This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
All right. That one is done. Next.
Battlefield Earth? Seriously?
He's so
Battlefield
upset.
Earth?
It's the greatest media ever
Oh my
created.
god. All right, well,
Greatest ever.
We'll add it to movie night. Sex leading. I'm just gonna slide the computer. I need a little more cord.
Okay. I'm going to stop this one and start the other one.
Ryan isn't here, so
I'm gonna grab some water.
Okie dokie.